Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're at the Museum of Monterey. The show is MUSE. My guest, Lucas Blok. I would call him, what, a color field painter, a colorist?
Yeah, among other things, yeah.
Among other things that we can't mention here.
Yeah.
Again, Lucas has been on the forefront of painters in our community for many years and nationally as well. I just saw one of your pieces at the Monterey Museum of Art.
Yeah.
That's looks pretty fabulous. That's up right now. You have a show.
The Triton Museum in Santa Clara is up right now, and I think the Crocker's getting ready to put something up.
So the work has been good. The work has been developing over many years.
Yeah, I'm old.
You're old and you're still at it.
Yeah.
You're old. You're old and you're still bold.
Yeah, it's hard to do new tricks, but.
So I've invited you here for my own personal selfish reasons to get to discuss some projects that that are a little bit out of your brand, a little bit maybe out of your comfort zone, and maybe we wouldn't even use your name. We'd use some of your names that are given to you in vain.
That's right.
But using your work to do, again, what we can't do here for what's not necessarily appropriate for the other museum, but was appropriate for here. Right. We just had, for instance, a show on with the Italian community on the Italian Wall, and we're having what we're calling a year of Italian heritage and a year of fishing. So one of the ideas that we kicked around was going out on the boats, using the colored flares in the fog and creating a Lucas Blok color field painting. So let's talk about a little bit about the idea.
I moved here in the 70s, and it was kind of fun. On July 4th, there would be like a war zone on Carmel Beach. There were rockets going off, there were bottle rockets, there were fireworks that had been stolen from various areas, and after a few years, the outhouses caught on fire and they canceled the whole thing, But it was great to see the fog coming in around July, which is the time of year we get it, and you could see some of the effects of these flashes going off and so forth. At the same time, I was driving from San Francisco down the coast, and I came into Monterey, and there was this incredible green glow. And I didn't know what the hell it was. I thought spacecraft had landed, and there were these, turned out as I looked longer, there were boats out there, and they apparently used these green strong lights to attract squid. So in 1999, I did an installation for the museum here in Monterey, and since then I started thinking about what could be done to again involve the community, have an environmental kind of piece.
Talk a little bit about that show.
That particular exhibit was called The Persistence of Color. Yeah. And it dealt with the aspect of how color is used in cultures, as well as how it is part of our visual experience and how it's flexible and subjective and so forth. And Jeffrey Beckham and I shared the whole museum, where we curated some of the older colorist work from the Monterey Peninsula, as well as showing my paintings and Jeffrey Beckham's color photographs of Central American colorist culture, Mayans and so forth. As well as we took one of the major or little gallery spaces and completely redesigned it architecturally, and then painted the floor, the ceiling, the walls. Well, basically it became an environment people could walk through. And the whole idea was how color changed and shifted based on where you positioned yourself within the actual piece. And it was very successful, and we enjoyed that concept. For me, it was great because I've always been trying to figure out how I can make an experiential piece. I think of my work as being experiential rather than a static study. It's more something you get involved with. And so since then, I've been thinking about ideas, and one of them was to take these ideas of what happened at July 4th and these fishermen, was to try and involve, especially through the museum here, to involve the local fishing community, the traditions of fishing and the ocean, and perhaps try and come up with a composition whereby we could utilize the techniques and skills of the people that use the boats and use these lights, and use either through other colored gels and so forth to place them within an environment of heavy fog, which we get, and allow the color to just sort of waft into the cloud, as it were. And by coordinating it, of course, that's the tricky part.
So let's talk about, so you have these other aspects of it, which is it would have to be what do you call it on the phones?
Well, that's
A
what I was
blast.
saying.
Yeah, you have to do a blast and do a pop-up situation because you don't know when the weather's going to be.
So everybody have to be on standby.
Yeah, you have probably set up a little Twitter account to do that.
Yeah, and then we're talking about one of the things that really excited me about this is the idea of using either kites or some other way to get we'll station the photographers around the community, get them up on kites so you'd have so many different views of this piece.
Yeah, because I think air flights, somebody, a pilot, if they have the right instrumentation, could fly above it. And it would be kind of an interesting effect to see what it does from the top down, as it were. And that would involve it would involve these boats most likely, and I guess they need GPS to get out there and the whole shebang, and there has to be sort of a choreographed effect of the colors and how they work. And along with the lamps, we could also utilize flares and different color types of flares to station them within the composition. So by picking the beach, by getting people to sit on the beach, they would have probably several hours worth of just these colors glowing and changing in the atmosphere.
So it would be pretty fabulous, and it's just a different interpretation of what Lucas Blok does on canvas. Now let's talk about a second idea that we talked about for the atrium, walking through the through the I want to say gel panels, but how do you describe this?
Well, essentially the idea is, again, getting people to be involved in an environment of color and realizing their own perception and process of experiencing the color. So one project that I designed that I'd like to utilize eventually, and we've talked about here at the museum, would be sort of a labyrinth of transparent or translucent, well, transparent mainly, plexiglass or glass panels that would be suspended, whereby you would have these 4x8 panels of color, in this case blues, perhaps some greens in different panels. So as you walk through spaces within the labyrinth, colors start to change, and once you're in the center of it, you'll actually get, hopefully, the sensation of what it might be to be underwater through just this immersion in color.
This would be fabulous, and if you're out there and you just have a spare, I don't know, $5,000 in your pocket, and you're thinking, gee, that would be kind of cool, I'd like a call from you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's always the case. Sometimes these things get complicated because of the finances, but not because of the original ideas or the
But they're not. These are doable, and they're not so. We're not talking about $1 million to pave the park. Right. We're not going Cristo here.
Part of the issue with of course, the whole ocean series of the idea of the fog is, of course, it gets into a Cristo thing because we deal with this Coast Guard and the city and so forth. So it becomes a bit of that, which makes things complicated, which I'm not really used to. But there are those in the community that can volunteer to help with those things, always, to make it possible, because I think it does become a community event, could be repeatable, and it would be a great draw for Monterey as an experience, because people can come from Los Angeles, San Francisco on a minute's notice nowadays. If they get the tweet, I guess, they can show up 3 hours later and it's happening. And probably see it all the way down from Santa Cruz.
I've known your work for, I guess, the last decade. I've watched it evolve. I find it amazingly contemporary, even though you're using a template that you've kept the kind of same template, but you've evolved artistically, and the language is evolved as your color sophistication has changed. And color is like language, and you speak very now. How does color evolve with the times? I mean, it seems a crazy thing to say, but your color has evolved in a different way to continue to always look contemporary of a moment.
I don't know how the contemporary aspect work. I mean, we live here. It's kind of not in the mainstream of anything. But when I started doing this work, there were reasons. There were reasons that got me going on a path, and inevitably I had to make decisions all along the way. I could have changed design. I could have had a different approach. I mean, using rectangles and all those things are kind of limited. But I chose to say, no, it's the color power that has to keep changing, because the real discussion isn't just about the color. The discussion is to create a compositional experience out of the viewer's who's looking at the painting. I mean, there's a time factor, there's things changing, and it becomes a really subjective and personal experience. And I like to focus on that. I just happen to use color to do that. I could do that in other conceptual ways, but I still have whether it's historic or my own comfort level, I think painting still has that possibility, even though the popular culture says painting's dead, there's no reason for it anymore, blah 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 blah. For me, it's still, I think there's a power, and I think I tried to show that.
Well, what's fresh about the work is you're not repeating yourself.
Right.
You work in a very disciplined way. You have a limited. You've set yourself a challenge to keep taking something that has a very limited, in terms of, it's a very disciplined way that you work.
Yeah.
And you don't do a tremendous amount of variation within that, and you've managed to keep it fresh. And I get the idea, what's absolutely most important is that you're still having the experience. And I'll be able to tell, just because I know your work enough, I'll be able to tell when you're faking it.
Well, the whole point for me, I mean, as I do it, is I want it to be an expansive process to create things that I haven't seen before.
Right.
I don't want to just exercise what I already know.
Right, and you don't.
No, I hope I don't. I mean, that's what I really try to work
And that's a huge trap.
It can be, and it does for a lot of people.
Because once you're at the point where you are an expert at what you do, and you could very easily paint that one in green again.
Oh yeah, paint me another Starry Starry Night, I think is the song.
Yeah. That one sold well, so I better sell it. And that is an easy trap to fall into. You haven't fallen in that trap. And I want to use that quote that we talked about this morning that I heard on the radio the other day. A man that doesn't stand for something is liable to fall for anything.
That's right.
And
that's a good way to end the whole thing.
I just love that. And I think you've been very disciplined about what you do, and you've kept it fresh. You've kept it electric.
I think one of the benefits of what I do for me is it's a very rigid structure and compositionally, but the whole goal is chaos in terms of what for the viewer. The final product is just whatever you create with it. So it's a great way to work. It's sort of inside out, but it works for me.
It does work. The work is dynamic. And then again, I just want to say we would sure love to do some of these other kind of crazy projects. I'm going to put Lucas's, what's your email at, or your website?
lucasblok.com, LUCASBLOK.
And we'll have that on the screen. And if you're interested in some of these ideas that we're talking about, let us know, because this would sure be fun. I'd love to have the whole community having this experience.
Well, that's the great part, is getting the whole community involved in a project like this.
Okay, and where can people see your art, by the way?
Right now it's at the Monterey Museum of Art, and the Cardinal Art Association locally pretty regular has work, and now at the Triton Museum till August 10th.
Don't be shy to own a piece of Lucas Blok. This is Mark Baer. You've been watching MUSE. My guest, my great friend Lucas Blok, and we will be back.
Thank you.